Okay, I'm here playing this game, and it's kind of taking a little time. This strategy game called Call of War, and it kind of reminds me of a kind of problem that has been cropping up every once in a while for uh, YouTubers that are against establishment mentalities, in the Republican and Democratic parties, but who keep getting labeled as being alt-right, whatever the hell that means. It's impossible for me to be part of the alt-right. It's impossible factually because I'm first of all Jewish. I served in the IDF. I worked for many Jewish businesses. I've also gone to, I'd say, you know, I don't really have that many white Protestant friends. I have some, um, I guess white Catholic would also count, but I don't think that it really matters to me if somebody identifies as alt right or, far left is for me a lot more rare. I do try to get conversations and interviews with people from both of those sectors. It's not like I go and I say, well, you can only talk to me if you believe in this list of different ideologies. That's not really the way to build a good variety of topics that you can discuss on any platform or format. Even if, let's say, think about it. If you were to go to become a lecturer at a university, and you would say, "Oh, I will only accept people to come ask me questions if they believe in Keynesian economics or something." Well, you're going to get a very limited amount of people that actually care about what you say, because they'll say, "Well, Professor Rutherford, whatever the guy's name is, Professor Krugman." Think about it. Any of these people that say, "Oh, these ideas are nonsense. We shouldn't even talk about them." Well, those people are going to lose their popularity very very fast. And it's not just an issue of popularity. It's an issue of being able to being able to hold an audience um, that has different ideas and viewpoints. Okay, now let's talk a little about the issue of people on the far right, so the so-called far right. People who do believe in, for example, race realism, ethno-nationalism, or things like even national socialism. Full-on supporters of Nazi or fascist ideology. No, I don't. I don't agree with anything that they say, and I don't think, and for that matter, I don't agree with a lot of their opponents either. I think that everybody who is able to open up their browser or open up a book can, they can make their own judgment as to what's the best political philosophy that they believe in, even if they, or if they don't have one. I know people who live more by a religious philosophy, and that shapes their politics. Some of these Christian evangelicals or Orthodox Jews or I think or Muslims. There's a lot of people who their entire political belief system stems from their religion. Now, that's not really the way that I roll. I think most of my beliefs come from kind of observations of the market, some readings I've done from market theorists like Thomas Sowell or Milton Friedman. That's where a lot of my beliefs come from. And I don't really need a label for it. I just, talk about, policies that I support. And that's the way I think most people, if they really want to be seen as an independent and, unbiased person, although there is no such thing as unbiased, but as somebody who's capable of thinking for themselves, yeah, it's better for you to stay away from just taking a label, conservative, liberal, democratic, socialist, whatever it may be, and just expressing yourself as yourself, not as the packaging that you put on yourself. So as for these alt-right people, there's a couple reactions I have to them. The people, for example, that I see that full on endorse Nazism or they deny the Holocaust or whatever. I think in some cases those people are LARPing. What is it called? Like live action role playing. It's a popular term that's made its it's pretty much become in the vogue lately. So those people, there's not a lot you can really argue with because they're not in it for the they're not in it in order to discuss their true beliefs. A lot of them are in it just to troll. So what do you gain from actually arguing with them? You're not really gaining anything. In fact, it actually bodes well to just in some ways play along and get into the same kind of troll back things like that. It for them it's kind of a kitschy comedy thing, the Nazi kitsch or whatever. By the way, in the 70s there was a huge thing in Italy, especially, also in the U.S., but especially in Italy, of these weird Nazi exploitation films like Ilsa, She Wolf of the SS or something. And for many people, I know that there's a few people that I actually know from real life that have relatives that went through the Holocaust, and it's probably easy for them to, get, um, get riled up by seeing people do this. But you have to remember that, unfortunately, everything that these people do is protected by the law and the Constitution. Okay, so there's no way to ban them. When you argue with them, you don't really do anything to change their minds. In fact, you might even drive them to actually, if they don't believe in it yet, they might start to believe in this stuff, like what happened with the CNN blackmail issue in July, where CNN tried to shame one of these people who shared memes that were, very racist and controversial. They tried to shame him in order to make him an example for other users not to do that, and it completely backfired. And there's really no justification for censorship and everything. There's no justification because it's not effective. You just drive more people into the ideology. And as for people that they call themselves ethno-nationalists or white nationalists. Listen, I've had two of them on. One of them, I don't have the interviews up already for because we've discussed it, and he says he's kind of moving on from it. But I've had people on to talk about their views, and these aren't people that are going to become. They're not people who believe in violence now. Now, if we start this, like the left is trying to do, this policing of views and trying to get people to go with a certain program. This is the acceptable window of views that you can have, of opinions that you can have. Then no, you're actually going to get some of those people to become violent. That's what happened in the 90s when there was the assault weapons ban and other laws that were enacted by progressives and Democrats. They were trying to say, it would be better if evil people couldn't get their hands on weapons. Well, what happened because of that? You ended up having the Oklahoma City bombing. You ended up having, the growth of the militia movement. The growth of the militia movement was much stronger under Bill Clinton than it was under Reagan and Bush. And under Bush, there sure shit was reason for there to be a militia movement. That guy was about as bad as the Clintons in terms of his belief in globalism. I'm talking about the first President Bush too, not just about President Clinton. So, I don't believe in censoring those beliefs. I don't believe in not engaging with those people if they're willing to engage in good faith and in dialogue. If they're not, you just ignore them. You just do something else, and they won't, and they'll probably ignore you. Okay, I've had people come and troll my channel. They're not really from the far right. They're actually usually from the far left, or they're from liberal groups or whatever. And they usually the most I get shit for is for all the stuff I share criticizing the Russia investigation. As for people on the far right, okay, I just think that we have to learn from how they came to power in Germany and in Spain and other countries like that in the 30s. It wasn't because it wasn't because of inherent racism in the German or Spanish or Italian peoples. Okay, now yes, there is inherent racism and intolerance in those countries, just like every other country. That's not the problem. Every country has issues of xenophobia towards one group or another, but you're not going to fix that. It's not going to happen. That's a fruitless endeavor. The reason that those groups came to power in Spain, for example, was because of radical anti-traditionalist movements like the anarchists, like the communists, the anarcho-syndicalists in Spain. The Second Spanish Republic was largely a group of leftist, anti-Catholic Church advocates, and they started this revolutionary ideal that they were burning priests alive. I think I saw photos of that. Let me see if I can. I can't show it because I'm just using the camera for this one. So, they created this backlash by just, they were not only were they killing priests, they were digging them up and dead priests and nuns and just, doing all sorts of nasty shit to their bodies and whatever. That's that. Well, what do you think is going to happen? Well, a number of Spaniards who do believe in traditional Catholicism said, you know what? We're going to shut this shit down. And a lot of them joined the other side, the militarist, Franco nationalist side. And that's what happened. They gradually overcame due to both superior German aid compared to the Republican side, which was supported by the Soviets, who didn't really give a full commitment to them. So there was superior foreign aid. There was also superior strategy, and they were more popular than the Republican Spaniards. The Republican Spaniards, meaning the socialist communist Spaniards. That's what it means in that context. And in that case, it was the nationalists. The nationalists were the right wingers, and the Republicans were the communists. Now, in Italy, it was because of a major economic depression. That's why Mussolini came to power. And the same thing in Germany. In Germany, you had street fights on a daily basis between communists and the Nazis. And eventually, the Nazis just got the upper hand and they destroyed the communists. Now, you could say that there was too much free speech that allowed this to happen and not enough government control. But that's not the case in Spain. That's not the case in what has to happen is that you have to have just a sound money policy, and you can't allow this polarization to occur. Now that's exactly what's happening in the United States. Okay, so I continue to think that with the current administration, the Trump administration is actually the best antidote to this far right, so-called far right ideology, because they're gradually getting a lot of people who normally would be on the liberal and far left to rethink their position and go over and participate in this civic nationalist belief system. I think so. I've seen it happen. It's probably going to long-term sap a lot of the power from the ethnic white nationalist or other racist groups that are considered to be on the right, even though it's not necessarily the truth. Look at this Richard Spencer. I mean, he does gain some followers, but overall he's remained kind of weak. And I think that long term, some of these people that are talking about, oh, this is our best chance, we're going to get our ethno state or whatever. Well, if the United States becomes a prosperous, successful economy, and a lot of these ethnic minorities, they buy into the system of free market, and they reject this identity politics, then you're going to get a weakening, a counter. The pendulum is going to shift the other way, and a lot of these, ethno-nationalists, they're just going to look outdated. It's not going. This isn't going to be something that's solved by attacking people or violent confrontations. I heard yesterday there was another one I think it was either New York or Washington D.C. at one of these alt-right parties. That the far left, they think that if you go punch Nazis, that's going to discourage Nazism. That's not the case. That's what happened in the 30s in Germany before Hitler came to power. And it just encouraged some of these. It encouraged the Nazis to form their own private militia, and then the violence became even more bloody. And eventually, they came to power because more people in Germany thought that they could restore order than people who thought the communists could. So, what did you get out of that? You got Nazism. Technically, it's them to blame for triggering the rise of Nazism. Obviously the Nazis did do a lot of other stuff in terms of propagandizing against Jews, propagandizing against, I'd say, race mixing, against gypsies, against other undesirables. They did have a lot of anti-Christian material for a long time. I think eventually they kind of toned it down in order to be able to appeal to Austrians and other Christian heavy regions of Germany. So, this is a hard game to play if you're somebody who wants a stable society where you can go to work every day and not worry about seeing violence in the streets. But I think that the good work is being done. I don't think that the women's march yesterday, for example, which I'll talk about for just a second now, the women's march, now that it's been over a year, and they've accomplished nothing. The message has not changed, and it needed to change because so much has happened in a year that counters their narrative that I don't see exactly what their new complaints are against Trump. He hasn't assaulted any new women this year. I mean, what's their problem? Think about it that way. What are they talking about when they say, oh, we need to march against this bigot or whatever? Well, what's he done lately that's really done anything to strengthen the position that he's this bigoted, disgusting pig? There was a shithole comment that nobody knows whether it really happened. He hasn't gone and banged any interns in the Oval Office like other presidents have. He hasn't eluded Secret Service, bodyguards in order to see his mistress. He hasn't, hired private detectives to track down some of his past victims and harass them like some presidents have. There's very little new things to complain about. So, the women's march is a bunch of nonsense, and this white nationalism, I think, is on the other side. It's not very. There's not a lot of substance there, except for the fact that the left gives them plenty of ammunition to talk about. And once people stop reading the publications of the left, once a lot of their magazines and other publications start to fade and collapse, like BuzzFeed, like you could say Elle and what's that? Geez, I can't even think of some of them. Newsweek is going to collapse. You're going to see Vanity Fair kind of dip. I think Condé Nast, which is their parent company, is losing a lot of revenue. A lot of the traditional media, they're going to either collapse or they're going to contract into a much weaker form. And that's really the problem that they're seeing right now. And that's why they're stepping up. They're actually accelerating their own doom by appealing to an increasingly smaller audience. The hashtag resistance crowd. Look at GQ. That for a long time they had Keith Olbermann on, screaming at the screen like some sort of Rottweiler, and now he's gone. Apparently that's more because of his own issues of dealing with he decided, oh, I'm not going to do this anymore because I think Trump is already most of the work has been done to remove him from office. I don't have to do this anymore. Well, last I checked, he's not going anywhere. There's not been any successful motion to impeach him. Okay, it's not even close yet. What's the real conclusion here? He's bringing down GQ's brand. A lot of their traditional audience doesn't really read it anymore to look at men's fashion or anything. and they've kind of shat the bed. So I think the same approach to the alt left can be used on the alt right, and you can really just when some people want to talk to you rationally, yes, you can talk to them. When people want to talk to you irrationally and just shout things at you, well, you either can go lower. I take the Michelle Obama approach the other way. She says when they go low, we go high. I say when they go low, you go a little lower. I've said that for I think 2 or 3 years now. Well, I think she said it during the 2016 election. So when they go low, you go a little lower, or you simply you don't even engage with them, and that doesn't mean blocking them. Okay, that means simply not replying. If you don't reply to what they're saying, then they're just going to stop paying attention to what you're doing. They need that reaction. I always troll the Real News articles on Facebook, and the Real News won't reply, but their idiot followers will, and that always gives me a kick. It's not because I'm trying to convince anybody there, but it's because I find these people there that are so brain dead. They're basically like the Westboro Baptist Church of the left. Everything's either the Bilderbergs or the Jews on that Facebook page. So you go after them, they they get they basically get triggered, and then they burn out, and you have a good time. And once in a while, you make a couple friends on it, and that's the whole point of it. Like I said with the previous video about alt tech, going on Facebook or whatever right now is to find a number of people that you can have conversations with, and the people that you can't, you're just going to have to filter out while Facebook falls apart as it continues to do. So that's it for right now. I'm going to upload this video, probably release it in a couple hours. So have a great day, and we'll talk later.